So we're going to go over sprayer calibration. That's been a question that we've been getting a ton. We're going to break that down kind of into two sections. One way is just a super simple, easy way to get pretty close, and then we'll dive in a little more scientific and breaking that down to get exactly how to calibrate, exactly how much product you're moving, and then that way you know exactly how much herbicides, lime, or fertilizer to mix in your tank and be exact. So the first way is just super simple. Take the size of your food plot. Once you have that figured out, we like to fill our sprayers all the way up with water and just go start spraying. If you keep an eye on the miles per hour, keep an eye on the pressure, and just go spray that whole tank out and cover that plot. Wherever you end up, whether you get it all done with leftover or vice versa, if maybe you get 3/4 of the way through, just take note of that. Then what you can do is say, okay, I sprayed X amount of gallons of water on X amount size of my plot. And then you'll know, like let's say for example, if this is a 25-gallon tank and let's say our food plot's 1 acre. If we go at 4 miles an hour and we're at 25 pounds of pressure, and he goes and he sprays that whole plot and only has a couple gallons left, then we know we're roughly at 25 gallons an acre. But in order to make sure that we can get rid of that couple gallons, all we'll have to do is adjust our agitation valve a little bit, so that way we can pump a little more pressure to the nozzles. So we'll just close that agitation just a little bit and we'll go do that again. Then that way, hopefully by the time we do that again, maybe instead of 25 psi, maybe we'd be at 28. And then we'd be able to get rid of that last 2 gallons that were left in here. Then okay, we are exactly at 25 gallons per acre at 4 miles an hour with that psi. Then we know, and then you can start mixing all your herbicides, all your lime and fertilizers exact, because you'll know exactly where you're at. I think that's huge for guys for spraying clover and chicory when they're doing clethodim and butirac.
For sure.
Just because it's like, I mean, nothing's cheap now, number one.
Oh yeah.
But number two, if you go a little hot on your butirac and your clethodim, you can hurt your clover and chicory. I mean, your butirac is going to kill that. But if you went too hot, butirac can hurt clover. Same thing. You don't want to be putting too little of Roundup in every time you go spray. If you're spraying glyphosate, then you get Roundup resistant weeds. That's never a good thing. Or on the other end of the spectrum, if you might be putting, I don't know, maybe 8, 12 ounces too much every time, then you're just throwing money down the drain. So when it comes to simazine, 2,4-D, butirac, Quinstar on switchgrass, all that stuff is super important that we want to try to be as exact as possible. The other positive is obviously the lime and fertilizer. If we can be pretty exact, then we know we're putting that right amount down, not having too much and wasting money, or too little and not getting the results that we want. So we're going to break that down a little farther for another one. We'll kind of go exactly how you can be very precise, kind of how we do it on the ag side. But as far as just a super easy, take your plot size, fill your tank up with water and just go spray it, see where you end up, and then you can make those micro adjustments. Sometimes you might have to speed up or slow down depending on if you have agitation or not. Or maybe your agitation's right where you want it to be, to where that's constantly mixing the perfect amount, but then you'd have to adjust your speed in order to get that exact. So that's something that you can kind of play with and really dial it into wherever you want. Yeah,
and I've basically, since I've been playing around, I've had to upgraded the pump, done my nozzle spray, tip size is bigger. Now basically I can spray 1 acre, full 25 gallons. It covers my whole 1 acre, and I know that. And you can always write notes, you know, with a Sharpie on the side of your tank or something like that for reference. So now that I know that, I basically haven't changed my pressure. I think I'm running it right around 40, 45 PSI. And so I can add all my products. You know, I know how much product I need for that specific acre, and it makes it really simple.
Yeah, and then like I said, the biggest thing is with me is with the herbicides. That way you're not screwing anything up or creating Roundup resistant weeds, number one. But then you're being super precise with your lime and fertilizer, and you're getting the result that you want and that you should get out of that.
For sure.
So we're going to actually go out and spray this right now and actually calibrate him just to double check. But that's kind of the super simple way. And like I said, we'll dive into the more scientific way here in just a minute.
So another really easy upgrade you can make on here, when you're spraying like your annual sorghum screens, maybe your switchgrass, something like that, where you don't, want to actually drive over that specific, plant that you've got growing. I added in just a really simple ball valve in here, and so I put it right in the middle of my boom here, and so basically I can shut this off. It shuts off one side of my boom, and I can redirect all my product to one side. And then actually on this I can undo these bolts, and I can actually slide my boom over and I've got a pretty good reach. I can go on one side of my screening, come back and come around the other side, and I can, you know, put down all my nitrogen and stuff like that. You know, even same with corn, if you want to run, you know, if you got a corn screen or something like that, it seems to work out pretty well. So just another tip for guys.
Yeah, it works out really well. Yep. So we're going to dive in deep and kind of figure out how to calibrate our sprayers, a little more scientific method. First thing you want to do, you want to fill your sprayer all the way up. What I like to do is I will have my agitation valve all the way open to start. And as that thing's pumping through, I'll slowly close that and kind of keep an eye on that stream and get it right where I want. Now, where you want enough going back into the tank so you're constantly mixing at a decent rate without sacrificing too much pressure on your pressure gauge that would end up going to your nozzles. So anywhere between like halfway, 3/4, somewhere in there is great. Some guys, depending on your pump and your setup, you might have to be a little lower than that. So that's why I said if you keep an eye on that, just close that agitation valve as much as you have to in order to still get a good stream. Leave that like that. And then what you'll do is you'll take a measuring cup and you'll go to one of your nozzles and you'll set a timer. And I like to do a minute. So if you put a measuring cup underneath a timer, you press go, throw it under there, you'll measure how much is going through one nozzle in 1 minute. Write that down somewhere and keep an eye on it. I normally like to do it 2 or 3 times to double check, maybe do 2 or 3 different nozzles to double check, take an average. But that way you're figuring out how many ounces are coming through that nozzle in 1 minute. And then what you'll do is you'll take your, whatever you're using to spray, measure out 100 feet, and same thing with a stopwatch. Figure out how fast you want to start going. Maybe it's 4 miles an hour. That's always a really good speed that I like to spray at. Do a stopwatch for how long it takes you to go 100 feet. Same thing, maybe do that 2 or 3 times, write that down, take the average. And then what you can do is you can go in and online, there's a ton of different calibration calculators where you can actually type in all your information, and then that's going to come back and give you a really close gallons per acre. So then what you can do is fill up, you know, X amount of gallons, go spray that acre and see how close that is. You might have to adjust that again. Now, some guys are super rocky, you got, you know, big ups and downs in your plots. Maybe you want to slow down, or if you're super flat and you want to go a little faster, you can adjust that PSI, you can adjust your nozzles, and using that calculator, you're able to really plug and play however you want to go about that. But that way, that's going to give you a lot more precise way of figuring out your exact gallons per acre that you'd be spraying. And like I said, once you figure that, put that exact gallons in your sprayer and go spray that acre just to double check, because you might have to tweak that one way or the other. So just to recap, fill that sprayer up. We're going to keep an eye on our agitation. We'll get that valve right where we want it. Then our PSI is set. We'll measure out of a couple nozzles and figure out how many ounces per minute. And then we'll time ourselves driving 100 feet and see how long that takes us. Again, take the average, and then like I said, online there's a ton of different calculators. You can go in, plug all those numbers into that, and it'll spit you out a gallons per acre. Go double check that, and that's about the best way to do it. But then you're super accurate, and you can go from then on out, and that should never change. You'll be able to always go back to that amount of gallons per acre.